Hello again, Owen from SYNTHICIDE. I'd like to take this opportunity again to repeat ko lang yung sinabi ko kanina. No? I'd like to personally thank 98B for collaborating with us in this endeavor. So far, okay naman. I really appreciate their effort kasi kahit pa paano, nakakita na kami na paano magandang partner for things like this. So yung continuity na idea na sinabi ko kanina pwede na magawa ngayon. And also, I'd like to thank our guests, our speakers, for taking time to share their experience and insights tonight. And also, most especially to the audience for attending this event. Thank you very much.
And once again, merong merch yung synthesize their wisdom shirts, and I think they're preparing our prints in the future. Tsaka, meron mo kayong performances?
Meron sa December.
Sa December pa? But next weekend, we'll be having a basic synth making workshop sa ANIMA Art Space. So, I think, nag-end na yesterday yung registration. Pero sige, pwede ba? Okay, open na natin. Okay. So, ayun, November 18, ANIMA Art Space. So, lahat naman natin. Okay, sige, giving the floor to Win.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean and this is Sai and we're from Manila Community Radio. Thanks again, Frankie, for inviting us over. It's a huge honor to share space with other communities outside of our own. I guess the way in which we're going to go about the presentation is to share our personal histories and our relationship with music, how we come to the point in which we're creating what we're creating today, and maybe talk about MCR afterwards, which is, if you're not familiar, a decentralized internet radio station. It's also a community platform, and we can talk about that a little later on. So yeah, this is me. It's a little awkward to talk about yourself, but then I'll try my best to go through articulations of my own work. My name is Sean. My pronouns are he, him. I primarily identify as a transdisciplinary designer, and my work kind of decodes the intersection and conjunction of different disciplines. So where I see myself working is really in the gaps of different industries. So current articulations of my work encompass fields of culture, events, music, food and beverage, sports, etc., while using design thinking as a main ideological framework to navigate those things. I also do music-related activity under the moniker Duality. The reason why I call myself Duality is because of this idea of liminality, and my kind of sound investigates the relationship of lightness and darkness and how those things come and interplay with one another. Okay, I first, I guess, got my start playing in bands similar to Joey. I also played the drums in high school. And during my teenage years, played all of those other instruments, and similar to Sir Tad, I feel like that gave me the first taste of what making in community is like being in a band. And the final iteration of my musical experience in high school was starting to experiment with synths. And in conjunction with playing synths, I fell in love with DJing as a creative gesture. That was in the early 2010s in the Blockhouse kind of wave in terms of listening to record labels like Dima, Kitsune, and all of those Blockhouse labels at the time. And then I slightly fell out of music for a bit, trying to make a career in design. I took information design in Ateneo and did a social design program in Copenhagen and New York. And it's through professionalizing my visual design practice that I kind of lost touch with music up until I fell in love with music again in 2017, which was 6 years ago. And I fell in love with music again through the lens of community because the professionalization of my creative practice in design was so isolated and hyper-individualized. So I felt deeply dissatisfied with commercial work and playing this hyper-individual, capital-focused role that I decided to use music as a medium to connect with other people and find community. So examples of my articulations work come in the organizations, I guess, groups that I'm involved in. Tatsu is a small restaurant in Katipunan. We have a location in Poblacion also. And the idea of the restaurant was to go beyond the transactional aspect of running a restaurant and really have a space where people can come together and commune. So the idea was to create a third space like Magnet for artists and different creative individuals to come together, share space, collaborate. So in our spaces, we do everything from throwing different parties, doing DJ sets, doing workshops on creativity and graphic design, and hosting different micro communities from cyclists to runners, etc. In 2017, my best friends and I started a small event imprint called Transit Records. So we held workshops, talk-based engagements alongside one-off parties. And we saw that there was a gap at the time for events focused on dance music styles like house, techno, and electro. So among our contemporaries at the time, people were seemingly focusing on too much of R&B, disco, and hip-hop. And we wanted to create a counterpoint to that through this tiny record label. So we've slowly grown our imprint into a small collective of like-minded DJs. And we've had residencies in locations like 2020, which is now defunct, the DX Future, unfortunately also defunct, Bowery, another space that's defunct, and Local. We released our first digital release in 2020, and over the last 3 years, we've managed to self-publish and create a small catalog of releases with 2 more releases on the way. We also do little parties like Evening Breeze, which is meant to be a counterpoint to, I guess, dance music programming that's happening around the metro, where it's too much focused on the hedonism and the darkness that comes with rave music. So Evening Breeze is meant to be a counterpoint to that by exploring the dance floor as a space for communing together, healing and uplifting one's spirit with articulations of jazz, world music, as well ambient, as well as techno. So yeah, we do parties and radio shows and do music releases. One more recent articulation of community and creativity in my practice is through the lens of sport. I've found that when sport brands talk about the idea of sport, it's too much related with performance or this hyper-masculinity that comes with it of wanting to one-up each other. So with Red Light Run Club, which is a running collective that I created with some of my friends in the Poblacion area, again, it was meant to be a counterpoint to what we were seeing at the time by creating a group with an anti-athletic gaze. So almost being a community for runners who don't talk about running, which is more frequent than you think. So the people that we're able to bring together are people like musicians, tattoo artists, cyclists, graphic designers, and not runners from the traditional way of thinking of it. So I guess the red thread in my creative practice has been designing ways for like-minded people and collectives to come together. I've had to unlearn recently the center pointism of my creativity by dismantling the idea of runner, professional, DJ, producer as the icon within an ecosystem. So a lot of the work that I do is trying to reframe creativity through the lens of collective action and That's kind of the work I do, and we'll talk about Manila Community Radio a little later on.
I'm Sai Versailles. I also volunteer for Manila Community Radio. To talk about my work, it has been a little bit difficult recently because for the most part in my career, I've identified as a multimedia journalist. So I am independent, so normally I would develop my own stories independently and pitch those stories to publications, and then I would create my own network of sources, which is very difficult because I don't have the editorial backing of a newsroom or anything like that. But then I started DJing during the pandemic, and sort of really the learning curve for that was so high, and I found that after the pandemic, the publication industry, especially in the Philippines, was it's currently in a really low state. Compensation has been really hard for journalists. Also protection in general. The Philippines is one of the most dangerous places to be a journalist. The sort of beat that I had focused on was on culture, but I take a very investigative approach to it. So I go in the field, I'll organize interviews and really immerse in communities. But since volunteering for Manila Community Radio, it's been a little bit difficult trying to pinpoint what I actually do, because I find that a lot of the influences that I get from journalism has been applied to my DJing. My DJ approach is very referential. I like to excavate the sort of like the references and facts around a certain label or a certain sound, and finding the crossover generationally, thematically, stylistically, artistically. And so I don't try to, similarly with my DJing, it's very hard to pinpoint what I can offer because it's coming from a more practical approach rather than a stylistic approach. So I avoid naming genres like, oh, like what sort of music do you DJ? I don't like naming genres because I do like different forms of music, and it's a good exercise for me to try to find the sort of commonalities between music rather than like trying to pigeonhole music into one category, because I do believe that musicians, when they are making music, they're making it from a point of view or a sort of experiential approach where they're just making the music. They're not thinking about genres. At least the best ones, I feel like, aren't thinking in genres. So it's hard to pinpoint what I do, but I think it does span the field of art and journalism, and at the root of it, I'm really interested in how people interact with culture and history and politics, and how the different ways that people understand that. I studied in the University of Oxford. I did a 2-year master's there, and my thesis was exploring the creative industries, and my bachelor's was also in international politics. So I don't plan for running for office. I don't plan on working for the UN or an NGO, but I feel like a lot of the social frameworks that I carried on from university, I still apply a lot into the creative industries because, let's face it, like the Filipino creative industries needs a lot of work, and there's a lot that could be borrowed from social sciences. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in culture, history, politics, and how people understand creativity. Just to show you some of like the work that I do within journalism. So I've done reporting for Time. For Vice. And I was actually looking at the closure of Time on Makati Ave, and was speaking to a lot of the DJs that were there at the time when it got raided. And I also spoke to the police and their sort of perspective on why they raided the club. And obviously that was very close to home to me because I love nightlife and I guess dance music culture, and to know that like a club closed down at the height of the drug war was obviously really interesting for me. So that was one of the stories I did. I also done stories on like I visited this church in where was this? I forget. Oh yeah, in Tondo. And there was a church there that was sort of helping homeless people get back up at their feet using the principles of Kalinga, which is like just being able to offer resources without expecting anything back. But there was a sort of underlying story there where the church had these sort of ideals about how to do things, especially with the RH bill at the time, like being negotiated. And so how do you balance this idea of like offering good to people while at the same time maybe at like a policy level hurting a lot of people too. So I go on these immersion trips and interact with people there. I also done a profile on Palestine Joanne, rest in peace. So that's the sort of journalism that I do. And this was my thesis at Oxford, which is looking at how the internet impacts the filmmaking process in the independent film sector. So if you think about like a supply chain, there's this thing called a value chain, and the value chain can be seen as like the different steps in the filmmaking process. And how does the internet sort of add value to the different parts of the filmmaking process? Like what are the sort of challenges and opportunities for people making a film or working on a project? So that's the type of stuff I do. I call myself a racket scientist. People like to romanticize their creative practices, but at the same time, like I have to do a lot of creative things that I don't want to do, but simply because it helps pay the bills. And I try to be really real with that, and I think it's really important to give like sort of visibility, because like we like to talk about our creative work and obviously it's really great, but then there's sort of really long periods where we're not thinking about the cultural value of something. We're really just like trying to extract economic value, and it doesn't make us good, but it's the sort of necessity of a creative career is having to balance the economic and cultural value that you are able to give.
Okay, so we're going to talk about subverting status quo and co-creating features through Manila Community Radio. So MCR is an independent platform empowering underrepresented voices to experiment with self-publishing in radio broadcasting. So virtually we allow almost anyone to submit a show to MCR, in which we broadcast on our airwaves for free. Since 2020, we have embraced a diverse range of talent from the Philippines, uplifting marginalized individuals to pursue their creativity. So since it's free, we've gotten around 1,115 broadcasts so far, and it's all on archive. Imagine all of the different sets or articulations of music that have been lost all of these years because there wasn't a platform dedicated to archiving people that were self-publishing their work. So that's kind of one of the ethoses that we try to do with MCR, is trying to be able to, one, allow for people to self-publish and give them virtually no barrier to do that apart from internet connection, but also to archive what is going on in the local nightlife and creative economy. It is also fueled by volunteerism. We call ourselves a horizontal and decentralized organization where no one is on top of the other, where everything is arrived to through a consensus of the organizing committee. So the ultimate prerogative really lies in the expression that we want to give to the broadcasters. The way it started was in the start of the pandemic. Unfortunately, it marked a real shift in the ecosystem that we were occupying. Because of the loss of spaces in which we can express these influences and for our communities to gather, like up there in the left is 2020. Below that is a space called Limbo, which is in Poblacion, and spaces like Today X Feature in Cubao, which is really a safe haven for communities like ours to come together, especially within sectors or groups that are predominantly queer or women-led groups. The loss of these spaces really marked a shift in how the ecosystem was moving. So without that avenue for people to congregate together, without that avenue for people to express themselves, what then becomes of culture and the scenes that we occupy? So MCR was created as a counterpoint to what was going on at the time in 2020, where we didn't have that avenue to share music. And different collectives came together to create this platform that was meant to be for everyone. That was us in Transit Records, the folks from Unknown, which is a party series that happens every quarter. A group called 1-1 Collective, which is an internet radio experimental label, and Ikigai Radio, which is the preface to what Manila Community Radio became. So yeah, after 3 years, we're still operating, and we still open our doors to any broadcaster that wants to come our way. I believe we've had over 500 different broadcasters already, and again, 1,115 shows, both cataloged on our Mixcloud, our website, and on YouTube.
I guess just a little bit about like how MCR works and the sort of uniqueness that that it sort of carries over. So I've been a broadcaster on MCR since August 2020. MCR started in July 2020. And so from a broadcaster standpoint, what was really nice about MCR was the team was able to impart their resources to people who had never DJed before, who had never broadcasted before. I guess my history with DJing is I have been making playlists since I was like 6 years old. I've been listening to dance and electronic music since I was really young. Had gone to all these parties, but then never had this sort of community or group of people to teach me how to DJ, because the hardware is really expensive. And unless that you know a venue owner or you know someone with equipment, then you're not going to get access to that unless you have a controller. But then that's a sort of there's a sort of barrier with that, because once you start performing in venues, then they have the XDJ set up, and then like how do you do that? So with MCR, there was this sort of concerted effort to teach how to use that equipment, partnering with venues who have that equipment, going on off days to try to like just learn the ropes. During the heat of the pandemic, it also meant trying to decentralize the information required for broadcasting, and that's sort of the goodwill of the volunteers. Everyone in the MCR team is just taking moments out of their time to make the flyers like this one. The brand visual identity was done on a volunteer basis. People who go to the streams are just coming because they want to make sure that the stream is running okay. So that's really nice about MCR, and I guess like a lot of collectives that have come and go in the Philippines, is that it starts with just like the goodwill of wanting to see things through. And the interesting thing now that I'm part of the team is the sort of decision-making process that goes into I guess the projects that we do and how we do things. So it's just like, let's say, for example, an opportunity comes our way, or let's say a journalist comes and there's one person that's going to represent us. There's a sort of, we try to always have a consensus within the team, within the group chat, like what do we think about this dance? How do we do this thing? Not one person has like a more decision-making power to do things. So let's say, like you were saying, how like there's like a one person who is driven by personality, and oftentimes because they're charismatic, they'll be the ones to make the decisions. With MCR, there's like a real effort, and it's hard because like maybe someone has more expertise, but there's a real effort to just get consensus from everyone, and it makes things really slow. But that's the sort of utopia or idealism that we aspire to, is that no one gets left behind, no stone goes unturned, everyone is heard. Again, it makes things slow, but it's been nice, like knowing that you're moving forward with a project or moving forward with decisions together, rather than like feeling like someone has the upper hand to do things. And when we say horizontal organization, it's not, there's no like, we're still figuring out our internal systems, but that's at the base of it, is like the responsibility goes horizontally rather than vertically. Like everyone has a say, everyone has the ability to change things rather than depending on someone to like get things running. That's what I love about NCR. The sort of horizontal way of doing things and the volunteerism. So these group of slides is really about, I guess, like some of the more notable works that we've done. I guess as a disclaimer, like the day-to-day operations, really keeping the website up, paying the bills for the streaming, making sure that like if there's we don't have a physical space yet, hopefully next year. But we work a lot with like satellite studios, so like working with venues to borrow their equipment and really just have like a public space for the broadcasters to do their thing, but also for the public to interact with us. So that's the day-to-day. But we've been really privileged to like have really great opportunities come our way, and that doesn't come with conflict. So we're gonna talk a bit about that. Like I guess the two most notable projects that we've done and how we sort of navigated it with the systems that we have in place.
So yeah, I think being an organization that we are and operating with the intentions that we have, it becomes really difficult to take on projects, especially with big commercial brands. This is one of our more notable projects which happened last year, and it was a collaboration with Nike. So with a big institution like them, they wanted to create a campaign celebrating 40 years of Air Force One. And as an organization that doesn't prioritize profit and operates predominantly on a volunteer basis, projects like this presents an opportunity for us as an organization to reassess our values and push our intention. The main tension point with this one, as you might be able to imagine, is that there are differences between Nike's capitalist agenda and their commercial agenda with our more cultural, more nuanced intent. So we had to ask ourselves, how do we use this opportunity to subvert mainstream systems to further our values and intentions as an organization? So basically using the commercial machinery to support our values and intentions. As opposed to the agenda of the collaboration where they were like, sige, pick 4 people to be the face of the campaign and let's call it a day. The challenge with representing MCR as an organization is that it's not 4 people. How do we just pick people to be the face of an organization that values a horizontal kind of framework? So through staying true to our intention as an organization and really drawn out, you can imagine the deliberations that came our way. Ours of just trying to hash it out with people who just want a face on it. Instead of 4 to 5 different protagonists that they wanted on the cover of this campaign, we were able to draw it out and distribute it to more than 50 community members and fingerprints that were part of this project, from the visual campaign to the workshops that we were doing to the communities that were the creative community that executed the campaign. Parang all in all, rather than just 4 people, we were able to distribute it to a group of like 50 plus broadcasters who were volunteers on the of MCR. And I think it's far from perfect, right? Because when we have a capitalist agenda, how are you supposed to completely dismantle that? But what makes us really proud about this campaign, which was like, I guess, projected on EDSA and on major billboards, is that when did you ever see a Nike campaign with a trans woman on the cover? Where did you ever see one with a non-binary and queer people as really the center point of the campaign? So we're really proud about that. And the way in which we were able to do that, although it was really difficult, is through really being able to keep our intentions clear and knowing that we're trying to be an organization that values queer representation and horizontality. So whenever we found ourselves questioning whether we were getting bogged down by the commercially minded checklist that Nike was trying to push forward, it was just an opportunity for us as an organizing committee to really think about why are we creating this organization, who is it for, and how can we platform the people that we want to platform in a way that is decentralized.
Boiler Room was so fun. So this happened in April 2023. And it was a very interesting project, to say the least. The story behind it was that Boiler Room has a grant system called, a grant called Broadcast Lab, and it was a grant to fund projects in the broadcasting space that helped, I guess, would highlight on new communities or interesting scenes. And I saw an Instagram post that said that they were going to extend the deadline. And then I messaged the group and I was like, I feel like this is a great opportunity to highlight for us. Because sort of my journey with electronic music and trying to, and sort of paying patronage to Western forms of music, that was sort of just the narrative all the way through. And then sometime in the mid-2010s, I discovered Budots, and I thought it was funny, and it gave me a lot of joy. But then, as the journalist that I am, sort of trying to read the origins of it, I became fascinated that there was a sort of grassroots electronic music genre from the Philippines, and that no one was really paying attention to it as much as it should, or the artists that weren't getting credited as much. And within MCR, there were already members who were immersed in Budots communities and making Budots music, and so it just clicked for everyone that we should be pitching this. And we won the grant, and it was so exciting. And then we sort of started planning this with Boiler Room, and obviously the idea of Manileños culturally appropriating a Bisaya subculture crossed our mind. That was the first thing, and we ran through a checklist of how do we engage with this community and give justice to this genre without making it feel like it was culturally appropriated. So the sort of, first of all, it really helped that Jorge, who is also Jorge, who used to be known as Similar Objects, has made Budots music before, has engaged with Sherwin, DJ Love, in the past, and with Livia Montez from Cebu. So there were members already who had that history. Another MCR member, Pikunin, his name's Luis Montales, who he back-to-back with Jorge in the Boiler Room, had been making Budots as well. So from a producer standpoint, it was great to have that perspective. And entering the conversation with Sherwin and Livia, who were the regional acts, so we really hashed it out with them, what's the best way to do this, what's the best way to approach it, how do we talk to them also that makes them feel comfortable. And the sort of consensus that we got, given our own background being in Manila and being immersed here and knowing about the scenes in the Visayas region, was that it was for culture to sort of progress forward, and for us to have a better understanding of it. It wasn't really productive to stay within this purist framework, which is that Budots should be staying in the Visayas region. I mean, coming as a Manileño, you raise your eyebrows, but really it's recognizing the legacy of Budots, gaining in popularity all over the Philippines, not just in Mindanao. And it started spreading in Visayas, it started spreading in Luzon over 20 years, and that's just fact. It didn't stay in Davao. Why did it stay in Davao? What was the appeal of it? And so it was, how we ended up programming it is, one, giving credit to the OGs and the pioneers, and people, the artists who had come from, the cradle of that culture, because again, a lot of them weren't being credited. Their music, Sherwin's music was being used in Showtime, and he wasn't being compensated for it. So it was just high time to just give the credit that they deserve. But also, sort of spotlighting as well this new generation of producers who take cues from Budots, but don't call themselves necessarily Budots artists. So for example, see Showtime, we discovered him on SoundCloud, And well, they're a group actually, but only one of the members ended up performing in Boiler Room. And more like a Jersey club sound, but takes cues from like a Filipino entertainment sound bites and with its sound. And yeah, so like being able to just diversify the sort of sound of Budots and giving a platform for that. Well, the sort of programming hallmarks that we achieved from this project was that, so we have Filipino artists across the gender spectrum. We had trans and non-binary queer artists who had 0 to 20 years of performance experience. So Sherwin, DJ Love, had been performing for 20 years now. And Showtime, that was his first gig ever. Like, who can say that your first gig was Boiler Room? Like, it was amazing and he killed it. And he was so confident in coming into the show, like, I can do this, and he rocked it. It was so good. So 0 to 20 years of performance experience, and 18 to 40 years old, across the spectrum were like the performers' ages, right? And then across Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. So you had people from Manila, you had people from Cebu, and the Visayas region, and Mindanao also, and Pampanga. So that's amazing, and that could have only been achieved through talking to each artist and really hashing out like what's the best way to do this, and also asking them, being really frank with them, like, do you feel comfortable doing this? Are there ways that you can feel more heard in things? Are we doing things wrong? And when it comes to compensation, like, are you okay with this compensation? When you come to Manila, do you need housing? Do you need transport? And I think the tension point, or the thing that we were really grappling with, which I said in the beginning, was, are we being culturally appropriative, or are we giving appreciation to the subgenre? And we personally, I do feel like we avoided appropriation as much as possible because we opened that dialogue with the community and really made them feel heard. And overall, that was I guess the feedback that we got was just that it was received really positively, and they really felt at home. And you know, this project was a stepping stone for us to continue documentation on Budots. So again, there's a sort of continuity where we don't want to just make this the one-time, big-time project. We also released a compilation which was curated alongside Sherwin of 53 tracks. Here, I'm going to bring it up. It's called Budots World. You can find it on Bandcamp. And it's a fundraiser to raise funds for the trans girls. So they're a dance troupe in Davao. And Sherwin basically curated this entire compilation from different artists from across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And it's 53 tracks of Budots. And it was a great project as well. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to cultural appropriation, I feel like I think maybe several things that you can probably try to keep in mind if you feel like you're coming at a crossroads with this, which is that, are they compensated well? Have you entered dialogue with them? Have you done your research? Like, I think those three things, like if you're constantly engaging with a new community and trying to learn from them, just being able to open that dialogue and make sure they're recognized and compensated for their work, and you having done your research are really things that I was able to learn at a very deep level during the Boiler Room project. We should probably play some videos, just like.
It's not Budots! Please give it up for DJ
Paano po sa inyo lahat, sa mga DJs, mga producers? Go more what you love! Yes!
was like, Sherwin doesn't play XCJs, and we sort of can't expect them to. So we made sure we accommodate them for controllers. Actually, Pioneer heard about the Boiler Room project and donated it for Sherwin so that he didn't have to lug a controller this flight. Actually, most of them use controller, right? Yeah, so Teo Lopez did controller also, Showtime, and another consideration was actually the venue also, because we were like, we don't want to play in like a publishing club, but that doesn't get justice to adults. And we also couldn't play in a barangay hall or like in the streets because that would be like very disruptive to the residential area. So we tried to be really careful about not sort of gatekeeping it to a venue that already had a set community. And so we ended up finding a disused boiler room in Marikina. And it ended up being the perfect venue. And another consideration then was like, boiler wasn't allowing us to sell tickets. And so we had to carefully sort of curate the invite list, and that was really hard because like we don't want to gatekeep adults, but also needed to make sure that like the people that were there to appreciate it and not just like give us the sort of side eye, we're there. And then there was also a part of the invite list that was like, it was like a lottery, so you could like register and then you could sort of gain access to the event. So amazing! Like you can watch the videos on YouTube, just Boiler Room and Manila Community Radio. So that was a really interesting project. A lot to learn, and also more to come. So thanks guys. We're hoping to conduct a sort of debriefing research project surrounding the Boiler Room event and exploring these ideas of privilege and how privilege informs our understanding of vernacular music genres like padots. So we're going to be conducting that research. Okay, so we were commissioned by CTM Festival to conduct this research. And so we're going to be conducting field work in December. We're going to be fundraising for it also because we got a travel grant from Goethe Institute to travel to Berlin to attend the festival. So we're going to be doing fundraising for that. So if you guys could just watch out for it and help support, that would be great. But yeah, we really want to go to Davao and Cebu to really immerse there and talk to the stakeholders and also just learn about what the impact of this project was. Was it received negatively or positively? How can things be improved moving forward? And so when it comes to, I guess, like privilege and access to resources, as MCR, it's really just about like giving it to people who have less resources and giving them visibility. And using the privilege that we have to uplift other people who might not otherwise get access. So, yeah, love it. Love MCR, love the Boiler Room project. I guess as a conclusion, right now the organization is sort of at a crossroads where the internal systems were really like born out of the pandemic. And we're really trying to grow out of it in a way, or like trying to evolve in a sustainable and natural way. Because what we've discovered is that, like as volunteers, you really give a lot of your time and effort into this collective project. But because of the time and effort that you put into it, there's a sort of negotiation between, again, this like cultural value that you're putting into it and gaining out of it, but also the questioning the economic value of it. Like for example, within the members, we all have different economic situations. Like some people live with their parents, some people have jobs, some people are more well off and have the resources to pour in that volunteer time. And then there are others who look to MCR and try to sustain a livelihood somehow. And so for a while, like this is me talking personally now, like for a while, like we had said that we were non-profit because during the pandemic, we were at home, not really going out, and a lot of us weren't working. So a lot of the time had been put into MCR and like building it up. But now that we've gotten projects and we've got, and the sort of pace of life is starting to catch up with us, and considering the requirements of some people's livelihoods within the team, like how are we able to ensure the sustainability of that, and questioning the sort of cultural value that we are able to give, but that's not without this economic requirements that are needed to push that agenda forward. So it's been we've been exploring these this idea of a cooperative structure, which is really like usually cooperatives operate like agricultural cooperatives where you have members who sort of work together to meet the livelihood requirements of their team members, whether that means like selling vegetables or providing their own services. And when we consider the Filipino creative economy, it's very hard to work pro bono because you also know, it's not like you're a manufacturing company, you know, you can quantify like how much you're giving out to and selling to the world. When you're a creative professional, a lot of that value is arbitrary and a lot of it is hinged on other people. And so it's very hard to operate as a creative nonprofit because what is like, what profit are you gaining out of it? What value? And that's very arbitrary and very hard to quantify. And so that within MCR, that's sort of the things that we're reckoning with and the things that we're exploring. This collective sustainability, like you said, like continuity and like passing the baton to like I guess people who are more fired up to do things. And also, what I find is like giving incentive to them and making sure that they have the values instilled and there's an incentive for them to keep things running. And that often requires structure and having to establish those internal structures and value systems and mission statements is so hard. And then there's some people pouring more effort than others or like more work than others or like on a day-to-day basis, and some people, and because it's a volunteer organization, people dip in and out. And so having to negotiate that has been really hard, and I can imagine a lot of you guys have experienced it. But I'd like to think that there's a solution in the horizon, a sustainable one that at least can be patented in the future. Sean, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to sustaining an organization, the term sustainability often is used from a business kind of point of view, where you're making an organization where money is kept on top, and the idea is that it trickles down slowly to all of the members. We found that that's quite tricky, and when we talk about sustainability, parang the way we're trying to reframe it now is sustainability to be able to keep with the values as opposed to the economic implications of sustainability. More sustainability to be able to platform the people that we still want to platform, and that is a huge challenge. So maybe in the discussion afterwards, maybe you have some ideas on how we can organize in a way that we don't take away from the more creative gestures and push aside the more economic, I guess, necessity of running an organization. And that's something that we're slowly trying to hack at. It seems like a cooperative structure is the way to do it, but is there a cooperative that exists that we can pattern ourselves after? Every organization will work differently from one another, so it's a process, I guess.
And like what I will like, there's also just like the convenience of registering as a corporation because like everyone does that. But then that removes from like the value systems inherent in like how we want to organize, which is like really people first and culture first rather than money. Because it's like that's what like we've run things like for a long time without the money, but at the same time it's like being able to sustain it moving forward, even just like daily operations and paying for that, like those are realities that like a lot of creatives have to face every day. And it's hard to negotiate with like the cultural values that we inherit versus like the capitalist system that we're sort of defined by. So yeah, I mean those are the things that MCR is sort of learning. And yeah, I hope you guys learned a bit about us. And yeah, thank you.